Alright, in this video I want to get into Bible prophecy, looking at the book of Daniel and book of Revelation. And I've been listening to a bunch of different preachers and pastors, talk about Bible prophecy and a lot of very interesting things they come up with comparing the book of Daniel and Revelation to history. But some of them seem to be confused on certain things that I don't think they should be confused on if they study the Bible, which seems pretty simple, but I don't know, sometimes we just don't see it. Because there's been things that I've come across in the Bible that I've read a bunch of times, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I see it clearly, it makes sense, and I'm like, I never saw this before. So hopefully I can help a lot of people out with this video. Now, before I get into it, I want to lay a little bit of a foundation here. In these prophecies, when we see the book of Daniel at chapter 2 here, there's metals: gold, silver, brass, iron and clay. I know clay's not a metal, but it represents kingdoms and how the kingdoms are going to be, right? And when we go to Daniel chapter 7, these same kingdoms are represented with beasts, right? So when we go to Revelation and it's talking about beasts, we know that it's talking about a government, a state power, a kingdom. So that is very easy for us to figure out. And when it talks about the sea, there's different things that you can come up with, but it tells you in Revelation in chapter 18 that the seas represent a great multitude of people. And the land would represent a small portion of people. But I also think there's more meanings to it, such as the law of the sea and the law of the land, which I'll get into as I go through this, but I've talked about in other videos with common law and Roman law. Common law being the law of the land and Roman law being law of the sea. If you don't know the law, you should really know the law. But anyway, let's get into this. Now, I just threw this stuff up, so it might be a little sloppy, but at times that opens up the door to really put a lot of detail, and sometimes new things come up and I edit myself and learn new things as I do these. So let's do this, right? Let's start off here by just where I'm at right now. And it's the book of Daniel, and this is the image that we get. I wanted to show a visual. In Daniel chapter 2, you can see here's another depiction of it. And this one actually says the right thing at the bottom. Papal Rome and modern nations of Europe, right? I just like that one because I like seeing that it's Jesus is going to come and destroy it. And so I'm just drawn to that one. But we're told in the vision that Nebuchadnezzar sees a statue and that it's struck and destroyed and it causes him distress because he represents Babylon, the head of gold, right? They are conquered by the Medo-Persians, who represent the chest and arms of silver. They are conquered by Greece, which represent the belly and thighs of brass. The legs of iron is because Rome conquered Greece, but there's not a new kingdom to rise up. What happens is Rome changes and mingles with God's people, and we get iron mixed with clay, but they do not cleave one to another. It even calls clay the seed of man. It calls clay the potter's clay, which in Jeremiah tells us that God's the potter and we're the clay. So he's going to mold us into whatever he sees fit. And what does the clay have to say to that? Who is the the clay is actually going to tell the potter what to do and how to do it and all this. But anyway, that's why in Daniel chapter 2, which we're not going to read, if you read it, it mentions the clay being miry, as in dirty, and that it's potter's clay, and that it's baked clay. So not only is it dirty, as in sinful, but it's also baked, as in it's hardened, where he can't mold it into his image. All right? So we see that the Roman Empire mixes with God's people and becomes the Papal Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Empire. Because the Pope is the Emperor of Rome, the kingdom still stands. So when people are like, who's Babylon? Well, you can just follow the trail. I mean, some people say it's America or some Middle Eastern nation or whatever. Actually, no, the Bible tells you Babylon is passed on to the Medo-Persians, to the Grecians, to the Romans, and to Papal Rome. So Papal Rome is Babylon. It's a mystery because people don't see what's right in front of their face. But anyway, God reveals it. Just gotta open your eyes. But anyway, not sure what I want to jump to. This Daniel chapter 7 is going to be very interesting because it has a lot of detail. But let's jump into Revelation because I'm sure more Christians have gotten to Revelation than they have Daniel. But anyway, in Revelation chapter 13, the beast out of the sea, which means, many nations. We get two beasts here. But let's read this description here. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So here's a key thing, having the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over the kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, before I jump over to Daniel real quick here, before we go to this next beast, we see the dragon gave him his power. The dragon we read in Revelation 12 tells us that it's the old serpent, the devil, Satan, right? That's the dragon. But the indescript beast, which we're going to read about in Daniel chapter 7, a lot of people depict as the dragon, and they depict the Roman Empire as the dragon. So the dragon gives the power over, which is what happened when the papacy actually started. The Roman emperor gave over his authority to the Bishop of Rome, making him the Pontifex Maximus, the Emperor of Rome, so he's the head of the church and the state. But anyway, let's continue on with this. There's a lot of detail in this, and I want to make sure I don't skip over and go too fast. So I'm going to read this part, and then later we're going to come back to look at the interpretation to let you know. Alright? So it says here, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of the heavens drove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. This is Babylon. Babylon is depicted as a lion, and Nebuchadnezzar, who's the head of Babylon, was humbled by God. He was made to realize what a beast he was. For 7 years he was eating grass like an ox, but then he was lifted up after he was humbled and brought back to his senses, and he ended up praising God after such. Excuse me. It goes on to say, and behold another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side. This is the Medo-Persian Empire, and because it's raised up on one side is because I think the Persians were a bit stronger, so that's why one side is a bit stronger than the other, but they teamed up, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, of it between the teeth of it, and they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. Okay, let me slow down. These 3 ribs are actually 3 nations that I believe they ended up conquering and or destroying. I don't remember them off the top of my head. But anyway, it says, After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. This is the Grecian Empire. It has 4 wings because of how fast it conquered. It was like the fastest anybody's ever seen. It just was amazing, and it was actually more to do with psychological warfare than actual warfare. But anyway, the 4 heads is because after Alexander the Great did all this conquering, he died, I think in his 30s, so he's relatively young. He had 4 generals take over. So this is a very detailed prophecy here. It says, After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth. Notice that iron, right? Because the 4th kingdom is iron, which is interesting that the Grecians used brass, the Romans ended up using iron. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. I want to see what it says here for great things, because it's speaking these blasphemous things. We're going to go to the interpretation, but before we do, let's slow down. There's another beast that is not mentioned in Daniel. Hold on, I just got a message here I want to respond to. Alright, sorry about that. But it says here, And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had the power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now here, I believe this beast to be America, because it rose up like a lamb, had two horns, the two-party system, right? But it ends up speaking like a dragon, because it comes up out of the earth, right? America started as a common law land, which is the law of the land, where everybody was free. But it quickly ends up going into the jurisdiction of the beast and going under Roman law, because we had the Civil War, and that opened the doors to the shit that ended up happening that led to the, what is it called, the Great Depression, because we started making money an idol, and God judged us and punished us, and instead of repenting and turning back towards God, instead of trusting in money, we signed contract to bind us into Roman law with the Social Security number. That's contracting, which is adultery, because it's like a marriage contract where God's not going to take care of us, the government is. And people don't realize that Washington, D.C. is a corporation that is not part of the United States for America. It's its own separate entity. And it's owned by the City of London, which is its own separate entity from England, which is owned by the Vatican, which is its own separate entity from Italy, even though it's in Rome. It's its own little city-state. And it's its own little evil trinity, you could say. But the Vatican runs things through London and through Washington, D.C. That's why our presidents and the prime ministers go kiss the ring or kiss the ass of the Pope. And now, after the Social Security number introduced, all of a sudden we have income tax, and then we have fines and jail time for victimless crimes, where the state claims to be the victim when the state is a non-living entity that cannot claim to be a victim of anything. Like you killing Gandalf is not real. You just burned a book or something. There's nothing you can do to actually hurt Gandalf. Gandalf doesn't exist, right? So people basically turned government into God and into an idol, where we still protest and plead with the government. We pray to the government for freedom and for rights, and to do this and to do that, and to protect us and keep us safe, where we no longer rely on God. And that's why we're going to get what's coming to us. But this is a little bit of a side thing. But this beast is paying homage and getting everybody to worship that first beast, which is that last beast in Daniel before Jesus comes and takes everything out. We'll get into more detail here. I think I might be going to grab dinner in a little bit here, or get ready for dinner. So I don't know I'll be able to keep getting into this. But we're going to get into more detail here on Revelation 17 and Daniel 7. So what I think I'm going to do, you know what, I'm not going to pause here. I want to get into this. I'm feeling it right now. So, well, let's do this. Let's do this. Revelation chapter 17. And there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Wine is like teachings and doctrines, right? Because this is a church. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones, pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of the abominations and filthiness of her fornication, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. Now, I actually see my significant other showing up, so I think I'm going to have to cut this here and make this a 2-part video, and I will break this down because it is a church that's riding the beast, that has control of the beast. It's giving more detail to what we got into Daniel. This is the little horn. The little horn is this whore, Mystery Babylon. And this is going to be explained as we read this and break this down. But you know what? Hold on. I might be able to continue this. Let me just send a message real quick. And hopefully I can continue with this because I don't really want to stop. So I'm going to try to continue with this. And the angel says he's going to explain a bit more. So we'll go to verse 8 right here. It says, The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, is not, and yet is. The Roman Empire seems to have fallen, yet it's still here, and people don't really think it exists, but it's here and exists and has authority over England, America, and many others. Not just through having a population that has a lot of Catholics, but through Roman law and contracts, because their fornication, they have fornicated with this government, made contracts and bonded, and they're going to take care of each other instead of us relying on God. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet to come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. The 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength on to the beast. And like I said, I said Revelation 18, but it's Revelation 17 that says, The waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. The 10 horns that thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their heart to fulfill his will, and to agree, and to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is the great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. That great city-state is the Vatican. The Holy Roman Empire is the one that still rules over the kings of the world. All country leaders go to kiss the ring of the Pope. And before I get in 18, gets more detail about this whore. Let's go into Daniel chapter 7. Go back here, and Daniel, he's going to get the interpretation of the 4 beasts. And he's actually going to give him the detail of the last one, which is the most important one to us. Because there's a whole other chapter that gets into the Medo-Persians and the Grecians and their battle and everything that really happens after that. But this one, I think, is the most important because it's showing us where we are, that shit is about to go down. It's going to hit the fan. It says here, at verse 19, Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devour and break in pieces, and stamp the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were on his head, and of the other which came up, which before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Take a little pause here. This little horn makes war with the saints. That's exactly what the Pope did. Anybody who didn't accept him as Christ on earth, the head of the church, which he is not, Jesus is the head, he prosecuted and killed them, beheaded them, tortured them, burned them alive, burned the Bible that they were trying to print and share with other people. This is not a man of God, and it should be obviously so. It's just they're hypocrites, they're actors, like Jesus called the religious leaders of his time, hypocrites, actors. They're full of shit. And yeah, this guy prevails. And he's still prevailing now, raging war and mixing with all the kings of the earth, all the leaders. And right now there's a huge war, obviously, on Christians. You can be anything in this world but a Christian. But anyway, goes on to say, Thus he said, The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break in pieces. The 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first. And he shall subdue 3 kings, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. I'm going to stop right here, because he's going to change times and laws. Well, what does that mean? Well, he changes the laws of God. The Catholic Church removed the second commandment about not having idols, not bowing down to them or worshiping them. Changed the Sabbath day from the 7th day to the first day of the week. And they boast about this in their writings, that the Pope did this. And they changed holy days and other such things as well, bringing in Saturnalia as Christmas and Ishtar Day as Easter, claiming it has to do, Easter bunnies and eggs have to do with Jesus, just like Santa for some reason is a mockery of God and basically claiming to be God, giving you a gift and knowing everything and judging you. And people more worship Santa than they do the real God. But anyway, it's just more and more evidence showing you this. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and there shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Now, this is something that's going to go on for a while, but this time and dividing of time, there's a lot of things to get into there, just like there's something back here to get into about the um, 7 kings and 5 are fallen, 1 is, and 1's to come. That's something to get into detail for another video. But this part about the times, and the dividing of time, which is 3.5 years. A time is 1, 2 times is 2, and the dividing of time is half, so it's 3.5. Ties into what we read about in Revelation, tying into the uh, tribulation. And yeah, I think this is something that's going to come, which is actually God pouring his judgment out on that kingdom to get them to repent and get the people in that kingdom to come out of Babylon. Because we read in Revelation 18 about coming out of Babylon. But before we get into that, I want to show the history real quick, that The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbons, a book you might want to read. When the Roman Empire fell, it broke into 10 divisions, like the 10 toes, which is very interesting, and where we mentioned the 10 horns, the 10 kings, right? And right when the papacy came out, that stout little horn, I'm going to read this real quick. It says, 3 of the 10 kings were to be destroyed by the instigation of the little horn power. Only the papacy fits this description. 3 kingdoms that did not accept the papal mandates regarding Christ's divinity were literally uprooted and mercilessly destroyed. Although the doctrine of the divinity of Christ was correct, the method of dealing with it was not. Since the little horn made its appearance after the subversion of Rome into 10 different states after 476 AD, but before the destruction of the 3 of them because it arises among all 10, we now have a very definite time frame for the rise of the Antichrist power. The Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths were eliminated by the year 538 AD. This power was to arise between 476 AD and 538 AD. These conquests strengthened the hand of the papacy, which was established by the year 538 AD. In that year, Regulus, the bishop of Rome, ascended the papal throne under the protection of the Roman general Basileus. The date for the establishment of the Papal Rome as an independent power can thus be pinned at 538 AD. So this little horn, claiming to basically be God on earth and having the power to change his law and dictate what is true and what isn't, came up after it destroyed 3 kingdoms. So, yeah. I'm gonna actually have to get going, so I suggest read about the fall of Babylon, where all the stuff she buys for her clothing and her gold and her incense that she's always burning and shaking around, and for the idols and for the wine and the Eucharist thing they do and all this stuff. The merchant, because everything runs on Roman law of the sea, and this taxation and the Federal Reserve, all this stuff ties into Babylon and who can make war with the papacy. Name anybody who can go to war with the papacy. Because everybody has a good chunk of Catholics in their nation. So, yeah. But ultimately, which is nice, I imagine during the tribulation, is that we're going to actually see and hear about the Catholic Church being destroyed, because the kingdoms of the world are actually going to rise up and get sick of her and tear her apart. Probably because of the plagues, because they're getting attacked by God for attacking his saints, because the world is going to attack Christians all over. So that's one good thing about it. But I'd rather you all open your eyes now and get ready. But anyway, I would have gone more detail. I was kind of rushed trying to give you a lot of information. I'll do more on it later, get more detail maybe, especially about the Seven Kings, Five have fallen, one is, one's to come kind of thing. That one's kind of interesting. So, thanks for watching and take care.